Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you. That was lovely. It was a bit surreal, but very nice. I'll just start off by asking you how you found coming back to Napier and how you're feeling getting this award at your own campus so many years after you've already graduated.
It was a little bit surreal, I'll be honest, but just lovely. It's so nice to be back at Edinburgh Napier, and it's so nice to kind of reflect on what actually started here and where I am now. I was saying to someone else that my friends and I actually set up a little web development company when we were doing our masters here, and we named it after the student union. And yeah, that was my first little foray into entrepreneurship, actually, and just getting the idea of, well, maybe we can do something. It definitely wasn't the scale of ambition that we have now for Valla, but I think the seeds definitely started right here.
Yeah, where are you wanting Valla to kind of end up? Obviously, you're still in the startup kind of stage.
Yeah.
So where do you see it going? What's the vision?
The vision is for anytime anyone in the UK and then internationally has something unfair happen to them at work, in their rental situations, anything like that, that they know that they can come to Valla. So I want to be in the pocket of every citizen in the UK and beyond. So it is a global ambition.
Yeah, and would you say Valla's kind of cause is inherently quite political? Because it represents or helps people that are of usually a lower socioeconomic group, such as students like myself and you're at Napier. Would you say you're trying to change the system as well as build Valla?
Absolutely. I think what's really shocking about the access to justice problem, as it's described, is that it affects almost every single person in society. If you think roughly about how much money would you need to be able to fight your employer by paying a law firm to do it, the cutoff is about £60,000 salary. Well, 90% of the British working public earns less than £60,000. But we found that if we design for the most marginalised, so people with the biggest difficulties accessing the tools, people who are finding the sharpest end of these problems at work, then we can build something that works for 90% of the working public. So we take that approach of focusing on the most marginalised and then kind of working our way from there.
And Valla's quite a specific, it's solving quite a specific problem. How did you come across this? Where did that original idea come from?
It came from being a woman in the tech industry, which is unfortunately not easy all the time, but definitely worth it. So yeah, when I became more senior as I moved through my career, I was often the only woman in like a management or an executive team, and people would come to me with their problems at work, and I kept seeing the same pattern repeating over and over, where something bad would happen, they couldn't really seem to do anything about it, and so they would just leave. And to be honest, I just got angry about that, and I wanted people to be able to have some kind of accountability, and they couldn't afford to do it the old-fashioned way. And I thought, well, why can't we use technology to help someone move through this process and get more accountability for themselves?
Awesome. And you mentioned kind of women in tech, and obviously this award is about women innovators.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, with regards to this award and opening up tech to more women, how do we do that? What strategies do we use to kind of include more women, especially on campuses?
Yeah. I think from what I've seen of the statistics, young women are often very interested in technology, and then sometimes they even enter technology a little bit, but then as they get a little bit older, the interest starts to wane, almost as if the industry kind of starts to teach them that it's not really for them. And so I would love for young women to be able to keep that initial enthusiasm to be in tech, because tech needs women and people from all genders. And so I think one of the things that we can do is show more women as leaders and showcase when women are leaders. I know an incredible group of women entrepreneurs in the tech industry, but I don't know that we show them as often, so it's hard to be what you can't see. I think also we need to continue teaching the tech industry about how to be inclusive to women. Really basic stuff like making sure that you don't have like a lad culture or all that kind of stuff. There's some really basic stuff that hasn't quite gotten through yet. And so I think there's some really simple things that can happen, but more than anything, we need to show that women are already in tech, and that even if you're the only woman in the room, there are other ones out there.
Yeah, that's a really good cause. It's nice to hear, someone come here at Napier and speak so passionately about entrepreneurship, and especially a female role model as well. Do you feel like we need more of that on campus, generally speaking? Just in terms of women in STEM, it's obviously improved so much over the past 20 years, but do you feel like we still have a way to go?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would argue that I might have had it a little bit easier than young women entering the workforce now are going to have it. I think there's been a bit of a backlash culturally against more inclusive practices at work, and so I think I don't think we can really take anything for granted in terms of progress. I really think that you have to keep pushing for progress all the time. So I think having more people who have been there and come back and one, show that it's possible, and also share whatever we have learned along the way, I think can only help. And I've certainly benefited from the experience of the women who have come before me and have been generous enough to give me their time and their encouragement. I think it's a key part of making sure that more and more women are able to move into STEM.
And do you feel like your time at Napier, especially your 4th year that you did, that contributed to your career now?
Absolutely, yeah. It was the foundational part of... I had taught myself to code before I came to Napier, but this is where I learned to properly work in technology. This is where I kind of codified a lot of my skills, and it gave me the credibility and the framework to kind of move into the professional world, where first I worked as a software engineer, and then I moved into digital marketing, and then into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about kind of saying, I'll do it later, as I'm not ready for it yet. What was that spark, or what was that change that happened that made you make the jump?
Seeing people, the thing that really shook me out of my inertia, which is I think where a lot of women are in particular, where they think, I'll be ready once I get this done, I'll be ready once I get that done. Seeing other people who seemed to know what they were doing not do as great a job, I was like, oh, I think a lot of women reach this point where they're like, I think I can do better than that. And then they try, and often they can. And so that's what happened for me as well. I thought, actually, I feel like I know what to do here, so why am I not doing it? And I'm watching other people do it. So I think at a certain point, sometimes frustration takes over. I would have loved to have been ready, realized that I didn't need to be ready earlier. I would have loved to have known that, but it took kind of getting fed up to get there. But that's my message for everybody else, is you don't wait to be ready. You make yourself ready as you do it. This job is something you do, not something that you are.
Awesome. And you mentioned rejection
a
lot, which is, as everyone knows, is such a big part of entrepreneurship. What kind of strategies do you have to deal with that? Because it must be quite difficult, particularly in the beginning, to get through that.
It's still really hard. I'm just gearing up for another fundraise, and I know that I will be rejected probably over 100 times. And sometimes they're really gutting because you get quite far down the process. You start to build a rapport, and something just doesn't quite work. And so it can be really draining emotionally and energy-wise. And the way that I've learned to kind of deal with it is to think of it as, this is more information that I need. The rejection is actually the raw material of my innovation and of my progress. I have to get a certain number of rejections to know that I am pushing the opportunity out into the world enough. And 2, I need to learn enough from those rejections that I'm moving with what the investment market wants, or whichever the sales market, whichever people that I am pitching to, so that rejection might be hard, but it's actually the only thing that actually keeps me moving.
And Valla, how big is your team now?
We are 11 people in our core team, and we work with, I think, over 20 lawyers as well, who coach our clients through the process as they represent themselves.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And you say you work with lawyers. Is that do they do that pro bono?
They work on a contract basis.
Oh, yeah.
So essentially, we have figured out how to we started as a purely self-representation platform, pure DIY. You can run your own case and do it yourself. And then we found that people still wanted legal advice, they just couldn't afford for someone to fully represent them. So we brought on ad hoc support. We call it legal coaching. They're lawyers, they're just not your lawyer who's going to represent you, but they will help you prepare for a hearing, double check your documents, talk through legal strategy with you. And so that's much, like literally like a tenth of the price of like a full fat service, but makes it much more accessible to that 90% of the British population.
Could you give the listeners an idea of what kind of cases Valla covers?
Yeah, so we can cover any type of problem at work. There's about 50 different claims that someone could make at employment tribunal. The most common ones are discrimination related, in particular disability discrimination related. So for example, not making reasonable adjustments for an employee, or somehow detrimenting that employee's career progression because they have a disability. And we also deal with a lot of wage theft issues, which is particularly relevant to our younger employees who come to us. So not being paid for work actually done, being made to work outside of shift structure but not being compensated for it, being forced to work through breaks illegally, and helping them get compensation for that as well.
Is that something you would say that UK students, Valla is something that could be of good value to them?
Absolutely, yeah. We can. So let's say a student had an issue like that where they weren't being paid for work that they were doing before or after they clocked in, for example. You could raise a grievance using the Valla platform for £20, and then if you decided that you needed to take it further, it would be maybe £150 to actually speak to someone and assess whether or not it's worth kind of going into the legal system a little bit further.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're looking at trying to recover something like £500, £600, or if you're doing it for the principle of it, which a lot of our users do, because they're trying to create that accountability, then it's pretty much your only option, because a law firm would just be thousands of pounds to sort out that problem.
Yeah. Obviously, you must be quite happy when you manage to successfully get cases solved, but what is the most rewarding part of first starting up Valla and just seeing how it runs?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that I really love about building this company. One is I actually just love building my team and working with a group of just incredibly smart, motivated people who are all trying to solve this big, thorny, difficult problem, and to, make something as difficult as workplace issues easier. So I love working with my team and kind of building the company and my team. And the other part is I just love hearing from our users. As I said to you, TikTok is one of the biggest places that people find Valla, YouTube as well. And I do a lot of lives, and I love just talking to people. And I love that moment when I can help someone go from that wasn't okay to, oh wow, there actually is something here. Like I might have some power in this situation to do something. To be able to kind of give people the information, to give them that power it's the best.
Cool. That's really awesome, and it must be great to get to be part of that. So one of the things I wanted to ask was kind of off the back of that, what's your experience been like working with the UK government? You mentioned that before, trying to kind of talk about that justice for the workplace and things. Have you seen any movement forward or any kind of progress?
Yeah, so the Employment Rights Bill, which should be coming through the Lords any time now and should come into practice starting next April, is going to be a big step forward. And the absolutely critical thing that is changing is right now, we did some research with YouGov, and we found that 1 in 3 workers in Britain think that you have no rights during your probationary period or up to the first 2 years of your employment. And that's because there are some rights that people don't have at that 2 years, but actually they still have a ton of rights. But this bill is changing that, and it's bringing those rights back to day one, which is so important and means that millions more people will have access to some basic rights like unfair dismissal once that provision has gone into effect. And that will change everything for students, young people, every single worker in the country. So that's huge, and that is a great piece of progress. It's not implemented yet, and so we need to make sure that it stays implemented, because the government has pushed it all the way through here, but then some of the main sponsors of the bill have recently left government, so we need to make sure that they finish that job, because it will be transformational for the country. So that's the key priority. The other things, mainly because of TikTok, I was invited to join the National User Group for the Employment Tribunal, which is basically where all the judges and people like ACAS and Citizens Advice all sit and talk about how many cases are going through the system, what's the size of the backlog, how do we make this better. And so I know that they're actively working to try and improve that system, and they invited us to come and sit at that table, which I think is a really good sign as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier before about kind of potentially going international, expanding things so that everyone can have access to this service. What would that look like? I know it might be far in the future for you, but how would that look like in terms of legislation in our countries? It's quite a complex problem to deal with.
Well, if you take America, for example, a lot of the employment legislation is at the federal level, and so some of the discrimination law, for example, is at the federal level. So we would be able to support people at least with that before we moved into more of the state-specific stuff, which would be more complex or just take that little bit more time. Equally, over in the EU, there's quite a few countries where there's really, really good workers' rights laws available, but maybe the access isn't in place in the same way that it isn't here in the UK. And so those are the geographies that we're looking at. The technology, as we've built it, it's relatively easy to adapt the tech for different legislation, different laws and rights. More of the complexity is actually learning the process and then getting out and reaching the people.
Yeah, I thought it went really, really well. It's really exciting. Actually, it's really exciting to be in Edinburgh. We do lots of purple plaques. We don't always get to do that many in Scotland, and particularly in Edinburgh. And being somebody actually local to here, it was really, really nice to come along. And it was great to be able to do it in a lecture theatre with new students from the university who are just coming in, to really inspire them to see the sort of the potential of where different opportunities can grow and come from.
And can I ask you a little bit about how you came to work with Innovate?
Yeah, I actually, it happened, I had a career in hospitality for 10 years actually, and then I had my first child and decided that that sort of industry just wasn't for me anymore. And as a young mum, I was looking for part-time employment and went looking for a job and took a random job as an administrator in a company that I had never actually heard of. And that was 10 years ago, and I've been working for what is now Innovate UK Business Connect for the last 10 years, and I've had the pleasure of working across loads of different sectors and roles. So actually I've supported agriculture, chemistry, and then found diversity and inclusion, or should I say diversity and inclusion found me. Something I've always been passionate about, but it was a growing industry, I guess, at that time, and just really found a passion for being able to support more inclusion and equity and fairness across the things that we do. And so actually now working for Innovate UK Business Connect and getting to promote and work on programmes such as Women in Innovation is really fantastic and inspirational, because it means that we are getting the message out there that innovation is for everybody, and making sure that everyone gets access to the opportunities.
Fantastic. And you mentioned earlier that Innovate has handed about 100 of these purple plaques out. How does it feel to be rewarding so many women these plaques up and down the country? These
plaques just mean so much because there's such a lack of representation on the blue plaques that are across the UK. As I said before, it's only 15% of the blue plaques across the whole of the UK are women. And the Women in Innovation, the award is just, like I say, it's bringing more inclusion to innovation funding. We're trying to bring more women into innovation, more to be able to access Innovate UK and everything that we do, not just the specific women programmes. There's lots for everybody. And these purple plaques, they're just such a representation of the fantastic work that they're doing. So they're getting representation from Innovate UK, but they're actually getting to go into universities, into schools and colleges and inspire that next generation and give that visibility. Like I said before, I think just to show people that innovation's a thing. It's something that people can do, that not everybody always thinks of. And there's so many different sectors, so many different areas of innovation that people can get involved in, and you can go on and scale to fantastic heights.
Perfect. And one last question. Outside of the Purple Plaques and the Women in Innovation Award, what else is Innovate doing to support female entrepreneurs and innovators?
So we actually have what's called the Pledge for Progress, which is 10 commitments to women innovators, and there's lots in there about making sure, like I say, that everything that Innovate UK does, people and underrepresented innovators are being able to see themselves in. A really important piece of work that I work on is called the No Limits platform. So that's a new website that Innovate UK introduced last year, and that's actually recognising that there's a whole innovation ecosystem, not just Innovate UK, that are creating opportunities for people to be successful, whether that's funding and investment or training or even just inspirational stories about people's journeys so that people know what to look for. And so we're working with lots of different partners like Google Cloud, British Business Bank, just more recently the London Stock Exchange have come on to partner and collaborate with us. And it's about making sure that people are aware of everything that's out there to be able to support them on their innovation journey and ultimately be successful.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay.